Good morning, everybody. I got my coffee, I got my vape. Let's talk a little. Something was told to me many years ago by somebody I respect very, very much. That was an aha moment. What's an aha moment? It's one of those epiphany moments where you go, I get it. It's when all the pieces fall together and it makes a complete picture. The fog clears, you understand something completely. And what he said was, stop comparing your worst to other people's best. So let's take a sip on that. So when we're kids, we just naturally emulate. We see something that somebody else is doing and we try to do the exact same thing. We have this innate sense that that's the best way to learn something, and it really is. You emulate what someone else is doing, and then once you get it down, you start tweaking it for your own self, and that's the fastest and the best way to learn anything and master anything. I remember when I was a kid, I was probably about maybe 8, 9 years old, and I went bowling with my folks. It was a company bowling trip, and I had never bowled before in my life. But my dad was Fred Flintstone. He had the shirts with the numbers, and he was on the league, and he hit strikes all over the place, and just was just amazing. And my mom was pretty good too. But what I did was I'd never done it before. So I watched what they did, and everybody would take the ball and they would look at the lane, they look at the ball, and then they start walking up there, they bring it back behind them, and they would kind of twist and stick their leg behind them, and then they would throw the ball. Well, guess what I did when the first time I went up there? I picked up my ball, and I looked at the lane, I looked at my ball, and I scooted up there, and I pulled the ball behind me, and I was thinking about kicking my leg. I was kicking my leg back there. Boy, I tell you what, I looked like a champion. And I just kind of tossed the ball, and of course it went in the gutter because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. I still continue to do that my whole entire life. But what that seed that put in me was one that everybody has. You find somebody that you respect and you admire, that's doing what you want to do. You start emulating them, but the next step, and sometimes it's the first step, is then you start comparing yourself to them. It's that filter of admiration. And that's where the problem is, because if emulation is the fastest way for growth, comparison is a slow way. It is putting this big giant boulder in your path, and it can stop you. It stops a lot of people. It has stopped me in a few places. Let's let that plane go over. It's amazing. We're probably about 20 to 30 miles away from the airport, but we are on the flight line, the flight path. So every once in a while we get those planes that come pretty close, and it doesn't happen that often, so it's actually pretty cool. Anyway, back to what I was saying. When you compare yourself to somebody else, you are comparing your worst to their best, because people put their best foot forward when they're in public, especially if they realize that people are watching them. Plus, in this day and age, YouTube is king. use YouTube for everything. So we watch people, especially in the reseller community. You see people that you admire, that you watch a 3 to 30 minute or maybe more video, and you see that they have success in it, and you think, I've got to do that. Or you think, I could never do that. And that is a problem, because you have no idea once that camera turns off what they actually do, what is going through their head, what challenges they've had, what challenges they have had to gain the skills that they have. And you always look at yourself, and you are your worst critic. So you're looking at the worst possible idea of who and what you are, unless you have trained yourself to do otherwise. And even then, that is a reminder. It's a little voice that you set up that reminds you, hey, you're comparing your worst to their best. Here are some wins. Let's celebrate some of your wins. Another thing that happens is, especially in the reseller community, and I guess maybe business in general, is you see this person is doing this and they have a lot of success. It's I've got to duplicate. I've got to do exactly what they do. And that's kind of cool. But then you see somebody else who has a success doing something else, and you go 180 and you change your whole business and you try to follow them, and then you see somebody else has some other, and you do that and you do that, and you get no momentum. You go around in circles and circles, and you can get very, very frustrated. I have done that with eBay, with free shipping, free returns, no free shipping, calculated shipping. You know, I have completely changed because somebody comes out with a video, somebody I admire, and they're like very confident and, well, this is the only way to do it, and this is the way that's working for me, and I've had this success, bing. And then I see somebody else says, well, this is the only way, and this is the way it works for me, and I've had this success, bing. And I found myself bouncing back and forth until I said, whoa, wait a second, let me find out what works for me and see what kind of success I have. So Phil, what would you suggest to do to fix this problem? Well, I can't suggest anything. I can just tell you what I have done that's worked for me, and that's what I try always to do. It's not saying this is what you need to do. It's just giving you, hey, another scenario, but you've got to figure out what works for you. But for me, I enjoy competition. I love being in competition with somebody else. It really pushes me. But the problem is when you're in competition and then comparison comes up, as far as comparison goes, I don't compete with anybody except myself. I always compare my progress to my history. I've taught myself to celebrate my wins, and I've taught myself to be easy on myself, to critique and don't beat myself up. And that seems to work for me. It's not what I've always done. I've only done that because people who have had success have taken interest and told me. That's mentorship. That's another subject. Let's take a sip. Well, that's it for this coffee. My camera has shut off on me twice, so let's get going before it decides it wants to go. So leave down in the comments what you think about this. What is your experience with comparing yourself to other people? How do you deal with that whole thing? Because everybody's got little tweaks and we can all learn from each other, and I would love to learn from you. If you like this video, please hit the like button, share, subscribe. As I said, comment. Always hit the ringy-dingy thing so you're notified next time that I put out some coffee and you get to sit down and have some with me. And as always, no matter what tune that life plays you, always find your groove. Thanks for having coffee with me and hanging out, and I'll see you next time.